Hello aspirants and welcome again to Legacy IAS Academy. In this session, we will be looking at the 5 things that we need to watch out for in the upcoming budget, of course, which will be presented on the 1st of February by the Union Finance Minister. So what are the things that we will be looking for or we should watch out for? We look at that, the reasons behind each and every of those 5 things also we will look at, plus any technical terms definition that comes across, we will have an understanding of all of these factors. So let's get started. The very first thing is the growth rate. Now, why are we interested in the growth rate? Of course, growth rate is the most important thing, but why specifically to watch out for? The reason for that is that there are a lot of estimations of growth rate that happens. India, our government, the statistics department, we estimate the growth rate, plus at the same time there's estimation from the World Bank, from the IMF, so on and so forth. India, though it is doing well, however, there has been a concern that whatever estimations we have had in the past 2 years, we have not lived up to that. And since we have not lived up to that, it remains to be seen what is the estimation now. Why? Because we can see a trend. What is the trend? Here it is. That since the last 2 budgets, the assumption or the estimation for nominal GDP. Now, this is an important term. I'll tell you what this is. Now, the nominal GDP growth rate was estimated to be 10.5%, but in both of the years, it has been below 10%. It has been less than 10%, close to 9.6%. So, it's a huge difference. So, now we need to see, will the government correct itself and put an estimate at a lower level, or will it still keep it at a higher level above 10 or not? It remains to be seen. Now, if it keeps it over 10%, again, we'll have to see what the actuals are in the upcoming year. But if it puts it below 10, then we can understand that probably the government is now adjusting for a lower growth rate, which will not be a good indication for the market. So we should not be adjusting for that, rather striving for more. But just putting the estimation higher doesn't mean anything unless and until you are able to achieve it. So that is why looking at what the estimation for the growth rate is there in the budget is very important. Now, one more thing here is what happens when we estimate high but we achieve low. We are making an error. And please understand this error of 1%. I said that estimation was 10.5%, but actual was 9.6%. So we see that the error is close to 1%. No, it is the 1% less growth rate, but the error is actually close to 10%. So why this error is coming? If this error is because of overestimation, the government may end up correcting itself and projecting at a lower rate than 10%. So let's see what is in store. Now, coming back to this point which I mentioned. Now, you would say 9.6% is still a high number. No, absolutely not. Why? Because this number is for nominal GDP and not the real GDP. So then what is the difference between the nominal GDP and the real GDP? Now, the real GDP is the actual growth rate. Then what is nominal GDP? See, what happens is you have a growth rate, or you can say GDP, which is nominal, and one which is real. So what is the difference? Now, nominal GDP is the GDP calculated for a particular year with respect to the prices of the same year. What does that mean? That means that if you are calculating GDP of 2025-26, you are estimating it, for example, then you will be taking the prices also of 2025-26. Then what is real GDP? In real GDP, what happens is if you are estimating the GDP of 2025-26, the prices that you will take will not be of 2025-26, but the prices will be of the base year. And since the prices will be of the base year, it takes into account inflation. That means it adjusts itself for the inflation. Whereas nominal GDP does not adjust itself for inflation. What does that mean? That means that if our economy was producing 1 pen in 2016, for example, which cost rupees 100. Now, 8 years, 9 years later, that pen might cost now, let's say, 200 rupees, right? But let's say the economy is producing still that 1 pen only. So we may think from 100 rupees, our nominal GDP has increased to 200 rupees. That means there is a 100% growth in the last 9 years. But has the production actually increased? It has not. Why? Because the economy is still producing that 1 pen. Then what is this increase because of? This increase is because of the concept of inflation. That means it is simply the increase in the price of that particular commodity, and the increase is not because of the increased production. So to understand whether the production has increased or not, we need to take the real GDP into account. If instead of nominal GDP, you would have calculated real GDP, you would have realized in 2016 also the GDP was 100 rupees, and in 2025-26 also it is 100 rupees, because the prices will be of the same particular base year. That means what? In nominal GDP growth rate, the inflation rate is also included, so it gives an inflated number. So this 10.5% was the growth rate estimated for nominal GDP, in which inflation is included, and inflation is growing at a very high rate. That is why the real GDP is actually lower. I hope this is absolutely clear, and the difference between nominal and real GDP is also clear. Now, second is we need to see what is the government stand with respect to fiscal consolidation. Now, what is fiscal consolidation? First, understand that, and let's see what the government stand was in the last 2 years and what it should be in the coming year. So, fiscal consolidation. See, what happens is the government generates some revenue and the government spends the money. Right. Now, when you see the difference, if let's say I am earning rupees 100, my earning is rupees 100, but I want to spend rupees 105. So I am 5 rupees short, means rupees 5 is equal to my deficit. I hope this is clear. This is my deficit. So I want to reduce this deficit, because if this deficit is there, I have to get money from somewhere. How can I get money? I can borrow, but is borrowing the right way or the best way? No. Then what is the best way? The best way would be, I want to spend this. I cannot spend less. Why? Because people are dying of hunger. There is government schemes, subsidies, etc., which the government has to give, military expenditure, so on and so forth. So I cannot cut that down. So what can I do? I can increase my earning. So deficit can be addressed by borrowing, that is deficit financing, or by increasing the revenue or earning, which is known as fiscal consolidation. When I increase the revenue, so if it becomes 102 and this spending remains 5, so my deficit goes down to 3. So I have consolidated the fiscal earning. I have consolidated. It means I have reduced the deficit. How? By increasing the earning. So the government in the past 2 years has said that it is targeting a fiscal deficit of below 4.5%. 4.5% of what? 4.5% of GDP. It is targeting a fiscal deficit of below 4.5% of GDP by 2025-26. That means what? That means that if the government is earning 100 rupees, it will be spending 104.5. Right? But a lot of economists or experts have said that do not go for so much of consolidation, relax a bit. What do we mean by that? That does not mean do not increase your revenue. It means that if earlier your earning was 100, your spending was 105, so you want to consolidate. This deficit is of 5, you want to make it 3. So how you can make it 3? Increase the revenue to 102. And your spending remains the same, 105. So you have reduced the deficit. Economists are saying, increase the revenue, not a problem. But do not go for fiscal consolidation. No need to reduce the deficit. Then what you should do? They are saying rather you should further increase the expenditure and make it 107. So the deficit remains the same and your expenditure from 105 it increases to 107. Now why are they saying that? They are saying that because additional expenditure from the government will help revitalize the economy and help it grow at a faster pace. Okay, so that is what is being expected by various economists from around the corner. I hope this is absolutely clear. Now, the third thing is what steps the government will be taking or coming up with in the budget with respect to facilitating the private sector investment. How do you facilitate the private sector investment? Incentivize to make them invest. That's one thing. Second, job creation, which has been a huge problem for India. India is growing. Indian economy is growing. We have been in the last decade, if you see many years, we have been the fastest growing economy of the world. But without jobs, isn't it? Doesn't mean that no jobs are created, but what it means that comparatively good amount of jobs are not being created, which is known as the jobless growth which India is facing. So what steps will the government take for this and for boosting household consumption? Why we have to wait and watch for this? Because already the government has taken some decisions which have to an extent not yielded the result it should have. That is why we need to see whether the government will expand on the same steps that it had taken previously, or will come up with new interesting and amazing let's say steps in this particular budget. What have they done previously? They have cut the corporate tax. Now how does cutting the corporate tax help? Now when you cut the corporate tax, means taxes are on profit, so you can earn more profit. That will boost people to invest more and more because the taxes are less and less. At the same time, the government has increased the capex to GDP ratio, means their capital expenditure, government's capital expenditure has become more as a percentage of GDP than it was previously. So the government itself is spending more. When the government itself spends more, it again boosts the private sector and others also to invest more. However, this particular thing has failed and a comparative increase in the private investment has not happened. That is why it remains to be seen what the government comes up with this particular time. And if the government comes up with something which helps private investment, when private investment is more, what will happen? More companies will either expand or new companies will come up. What does that mean? Jobs will be created. So it is all linked. It is all linked. More jobs will be created. When more jobs are created, more people are getting salary, and when more people get salary, it will boost the household consumption. So basically what you have to do is facilitate private sector, this one point. The rest of the 2 points will take care of itself. I hope that's clear. Now let's move on to the 4th point that we should be waiting and watching for, is that will this budget look into the re-examination of the government's approach to trade? This is very important in the globalized world. Means what? Will the government, see, basically the government of India has been protectionist. Protectionist means protected its industry from outside goods. How? By putting a high import tariffs on the imported goods. A clear example is Harley Davidson bike. Now Harley Davidson bike is the cheapest bike you go for, you may get it at around 7 lakhs or 8 lakhs for example. Now if import duty is 0 on that, that same bike will cost you just 4 lakh rupees, which is not that far away from a Royal Enfield which is close to 3 lakh rupees. So then what will happen? People will start buying Harley Davidson and other foreign bikes if the import duties are cut down, and Indian industries of bikes will be, facing the heat. Now the same thing can happen, same logic can be applied in different industries also. So what is the government going to do? Will it keep itself like a protectionist economy, or will it open its doors and bring down the tariffs and reduce the imports or not? That remains to be seen. Now ideally, even if import tariffs are coming down, it cannot come down drastically, but at least we will get to see which direction it is heading in. At the same time, with respect to the integration, will it facilitate the integration of Indian companies in global supply chains? Now, it is all linked. It is all linked. Why do Indian government protect Indian industry? So that they can survive till the time it become more efficient and start preparing better quality and more efficiently cheaper goods or products, for example. So till that time that happens, protectionism is there. But what happens when the Indian industry gets a habit of being protected? Their motive to improve goes down. So there needs to be a proper balance between the two. So let's see what the government does with respect to that. And the final and probably one of the most important thing, because this is going on since over a decade, wherein we are talking about privatization. One example, one classic example is privatization of railways. If you look at Economic Survey of 2016 also, it has talked about discussing the privatization of railways. Should railways be privatized or not? So all those questions are going on. So will there be a major step in this direction or not remains to be seen. So let's wait and watch for the budget, and once the budget is out, we are also going to be having a full-fledged session on each and every detail of the budget. So stay tuned with Legacy IAS Academy. Thank you.